No code that we know of comes about by natural processes. In fact, we don't have a shred of empirical evidence that shows that a code could even come about by natural processes. DNA is a code.
Is the genetic code really a code?
It is a code, it's definitely a code, and it is a code that's put together not by a designer but by natural selection.
What? Natural selection assembled DNA? Well, first of all, nature does not have a will or an intellect, so it cannot select because it doesn't know what to select, because it has no desire to select, unless you're talking about a being behind nature who does have an intellect and can select. But let me just go ahead and grant natural selection. Even if you have a process called natural selection, you still have to have something to select from, which means the code still has to write itself. Nature cannot select a code that isn't already written. So you essentially have a book writing itself.
Yes, because DNA is neither a program nor a book.
Well, bless his little heart.
You can read it as a code. You could even transcribe. I think I put this in River Out of Eden. You could even transcribe a book into DNA letters, and you could read it out again. You could preserve it in DNA. That's how code-like it is. It really is a completely code-like code. A digital code is merely quaternary rather than binary, and of course, it's not put together by a designer. It's put together by natural selection.
Now, in the simplest bacterium, there are 580,000 base pairs in its genome. And in human beings, there are 3 billion. So, are you really saying that all of that code lined itself up just right by natural processes, even though we never observe that as we observe nature today? Where is the scientific evidence for that? Or are you assuming that natural processes produced DNA? See how that doesn't work? DNA is not just a code. It's the most fantastic and optimal code that we've ever encountered. So you're welcome to embrace the idea that DNA came about by natural processes, but you should understand that that belief is not supported by scientific evidence. Actually, all of our human engineering has not been able to produce a code as sophisticated as DNA. So what would be the reason for believing that no intelligence would be required for the construction of the DNA code? That defies our scientific observations. But then add on top of that that in order to be an effective code, there has to also be a code reader present, which conveniently we have in the cells of our body. Now, I don't know about you, but these things sort of stack up and make it really hard to avoid the conclusion that there is an intelligence behind life. God of the gaps, God of the gaps. Actually, this isn't God of the gaps because this isn't about what we don't know. It's about what we do know. And what we do know is that codes don't write themselves. Now, somebody can hope and have wishful thinking and fantastic storytelling about how a code could possibly write itself, but isn't science about following the empirical evidence? Right now, the empirical evidence tells us that Random processes, natural processes, do not produce the kind of organized information that we find in the genetic code. Now, if we ever do discover that codes can come about by natural processes, or that DNA can come about by a natural process, then you would be justified in just ditching the idea of DNA being made by an intelligent creator. But until that time, until we find some kind of evidence for that, then wouldn't you be more scientific if you followed the empirical evidence? All the observational evidence that we have says that codes have an intelligent being behind them.